The Season 2 premiere of Dodongo Dislikes, another gaming podcast, starts in 10 seconds.
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3,
2,
1.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Dodongo Dislikes, another gaming podcast, Season 2. Back in the saddle, back in the cave, back from vacation, back from break. My name is Issiot, sitting to my right is...
This is Burbank, guys. Welcome back, Season 2. Yeah, over the holiday break, our podcast got stolen. There's another podcast out there, Michael and Jeremy Steal Your Podcast is the name of it, and they take over a podcast for a single episode and try to make it their own. Kind of a funny spin on Dodongo Dislikes, so you should check it out. Apparently, they also broadcast on local Atlanta radio.
Atlanta. All right,
but we're back. We're back in the cave, and we are ready to hit the ground running with an absolute banger of the game. Probably my most anticipated, not my favorite game that we've done so far, but probably my most anticipated episode since we started this thing. And we're gonna kick in with Zelda 2.
The Misadventure of Link. It's a terrible game. It's one of the games for me that I loved the original Zelda so much, and then this came out, and I was just like, what is this? It's difficult. It's Dark Souls is what it is. So if you're a younger gamer and you're familiar with Dark Souls, and you're probably familiar with this, it's the original Dark Souls game. You've never played a Dark Souls game.
I've started a Dark Souls game. And when I say start, I mean I've got like 15 minutes into it and I got sidetracked. I haven't really gotten into it. I've got the first 3, but I haven't actually sat down and played them.
Yeah, we're going to probably do Dark Souls.
So I'm going to have to play them at some point.
You're going to have to play them at some point. But I would be interested to hear you, not really hear you, but read the texts that come from you where you're playing a Dark Souls game. But
I'm ready because I've prepared for it because I have played the hell out of this game. Ask me if I owned it. Ask me.
Oh, well, we have to. This is the tail of the tape. So let's talk about it. It was released in. We'll get to the own part, right? Well, let's get over the basics. Released in the United States in almost 2 years after it was released in Japan, and was released in Japan before the original Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, we didn't even get the original Legend of Zelda until Japan already had this one.
So this one was released on December of 1988 here in the United States. In Japan, it was released in January of 87, which in August of 87 is when the original Legend of Zelda was.
We got Zelda. Yeah, so December 1st, 1988, it released in America. So we're actually technically still... Did you know this is the 35th anniversary of The Adventure of Link? And it will be until December 1st of 2024. So we have the rest of the year pretty much to celebrate this 35th anniversary.
Well, let's do that. Let's just celebrate it all year. I don't know. A
year of Zelda 2.
Yeah, it's a year of Zelda. It is the year of the dragon this year, too.
Oh, is it? Well, there's a dragon in Zelda 2, so why don't we do this? Well, every episode of Season 2 will be a different spin on Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, over and over and over all year long.
What do you mean a different
until Season 3.
A different spin?
I don't know. We just spend each episode, we'll talk about a different town. We'll just talk about Zelda all season long. Zelda 2.
Did you own this game? This is a question that everybody wants to know. You want to talk about whether or not you owned this game, or did you rent this game?
I owned Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. I owned it.
How many games did you own? We've probably talked about this before, but you owned...
A small handful. We'll say about 6 games.
But you owned this one. I think I owned it. I have to say that I had to have owned it. I didn't like it, though. I don't think I played it much. I didn't make it very far. I don't think I ever made it past, like, Death Mountain.
So
in my younger years.
I still have my original copy of Zelda 2.
You have the original copy.
The original copy that I had as a kid, I still have. And I still have the original NES that I had as a kid. Neither one of those items works. And this was the infamous game that ended my Nintendo career for about a year when I was a child, because I got so pissed off at a leveling situation, which I'm sure we'll talk about the leveling up in this game. But I was like 2 points away from leveling up, and it was one of those where you need like 8,000 points to get to the next level. It was 2 points off. I died. I got so pissed off that I yanked the cartridge out of the Nintendo before it was turned off, ruined the game, ruined the Nintendo, immediately realized what I'd done, couldn't get it to start back up, and just laid on the floor crying for like the next 12 months.
He's crying. But that's true. Like the leveling system in this game, if you died, that was it. Like if you were working to level up to 8,000 points and then you lost your last life,
you're starting over.
That was it. Like, so it's very Dark Souls-ish, but at least in Dark Souls, it kind of has the same system where you use like level up points, but if you die, you lose them all.
Right.
So But the difference is you can pick them back up.
It's very, very unforgiving. And it's even more difficult when it's a game you don't own as a renter, because I can see this from both perspectives. So to go back to the story of the destroyed Nintendo, you asked me earlier, did I own this game? And the answer is yes, I did own it for a period of time. It was never replaced. When I broke my original Nintendo about a year later, parents got me another Nintendo after I'd learned my lesson, but I never got a replacement copy of Zelda 2. So if I wanted to play it, I was back to being a renter. And I never beat the game before I broke it. So then from there on out, the rest of my career as a child playing this game, I was back to being a renter.
So did this game cause you to break your NES?
Yes.
So you're saying, so you're so mad at it. Yeah, see?
Yep. I broke my NES over this game.
You hate this game then, right?
There's a love-hate relationship that will be explored throughout this podcast.
Throughout the 4-hour podcast that we're sure to have.
So, playtime. What did you have jotted down for
I couldn't even tell you. I just wrote too much. Like, I played it. It was just one of those games that, like, I guess, like you said, it's a love-hate relationship, but I think it's more hate for me. I can play a little bit of it, and then I get to a certain point on it, and that's when I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why I don't like this game. And it's usually Death Mountain. When I get to Death Mountain, trying to get the hammer, that run through Death Mountain. Because if you die, when you lose all your lives in that area, you start back at the palace. And without the hammer, that's quite a journey back from the North Palace
Tower. That's a massive journey back without the hammer.
Zelda's sleeping for whatever reason. So I wrote down too much. Never beat it. I did just beat it on the Switch recently because I could start with everything leveled up and all the spells. And I never really used the spells a lot, which is probably part of my problem. But I didn't have like a guilt doing that because I know that I've leveled up so many times in this game that it's just like, you know what, I'd just skip all the level up part. And it was still hard. Even with all that, I still had a rough time. Once I got to Palace 3, I think, I was like, even being overpowered, I was not having a good time. Not at all.
It's not an easy game. It's a hard game.
How much playtime did you play it up until you broke it? Yeah,
well, I wrote down 10 hours for this playthrough in preparation for the podcast, but yeah, I mean, years. For whatever reason, this is probably the game that I've spent the most time playing of any video game. I don't know why. I just continue to come back to it.
Hard.
And about every 6 months, probably even more frequently than that, probably every quarter, I come back to it and I'm like, I should start over on Zelda 2. I don't know why.
But you've beaten it. Like you've straight up beat it.
It's like an abusive relationship.
Like you straight up beat the game though. Like
yeah.
I have one of those like little Zelda handheld things that came out a couple of years ago, and
the Game & Watch.
Yeah, it got in my brain that like, I want to beat Adventure of Link on this thing, and I don't know. It didn't work out. I just don't like the game. I don't like it.
So we could do an entire episode just talking about how we feel about the game. It's too difficult. The leveling up, the variance between the original Legend of Zelda and then they completely changed the platform to this side-scrolling disaster. We could do a whole podcast on that, but I don't think we're planning on doing that. We'll talk about some game mechanic stuff. I'll talk more, probably closer toward the end, about the hate for the game overall. But we got a lot of meat to the story and to the actual game itself to really dive into.
Do you think, though, is this a widely loved game or a widely kind of disliked game?
It's a widely hated game.
I think, though, if you look back, and I was doing it this morning, just kind of looking back at the reviews, a lot of the reviews that popped up on Zeldapedia or whatever it is, they were mostly for the Game Boy Advance port of it. But it was kind of in between the 70 and 90% range. Obviously, Nintendo Power fluffed it up. And
Nintendo Power, the players poll, had it at their number one game for years. And I mean, but that's Nintendo's magazine reporting on a Nintendo game, and it was popular. It sold well. And I think the overall response now is that it receives relatively high reviews compared to the 900 plus other NES games out there, but Zelda fans see this as the black sheep of the series.
Because it's the only game in the Zelda series that is completely different than every other game. They all have that same original Zelda formula, except this one, which we'll talk about as we go on. I just wanted to mention that Nintendo Power has it as their 12th best NES game out of 700 some odd titles. That they have this one at number 12.
Number 12?
Number 12. EGM has got it at number 72 of all time. And Nintendo Power fully said, an entertaining and natural step in the franchise's evolution. Game of the year 1988. let's talk about it. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start?
Yeah, I can. So.
But the first question that I have was, what the hell was Nintendo thinking? Like, honestly, they had a perfect formula with the original Legend of Zelda, completely turned it upside down for this natural evolution, or natural step in the franchise's evolution, according to Nintendo Power, and created this, but then immediately went back to the way it was. So they must have known that they misstepped with this game.
So I think this was a game, in my opinion, that was not ready to be taken out of the oven yet. This game could have been great. They had the overworld, which was really an expanded overworld over the original Zelda game. In fact, if you go to the southwest corner of Hyrule in Zelda 2, it's like a miniature map of, if you look at it, look at the map of the game. It's a miniaturized map of the original Hyrule from Zelda 1. It's a bigger overworld. And the overworld has things that you can interact with, like areas in the woods and areas in the terrain where you pop into, then a side-scrolling area. It's got caves you can go into, boulders you can break. Like, there are things you can do on the overworld to interact. And then, within that, it expands it into this side-scrolling adventure. So I think if they had done more with the overworld to make the overworld feel less like a map in, say, like Super Mario World, where you're just using the map to get from level to level. If it felt less like that and felt more like an interactive part of the game, and you got more items in the castles that were useful to help you do. Really the only thing that you do on that map is you go into caves, you break boulders, and you play a flute to make the River Devil go away. Aside from that, the map just serves to get you from one spot to the next to go to the side-scrolling areas. But if they did more with that overworld map, it might have more of a Zelda 1, Zelda 2 blend feel, rather than feeling like you just traded the overhead view for the side-scrolling adventure.
God, I zoned out there for a minute because I thought you were talking about a different game.
Dodongo dislikes how artificially long Zelda 2 is. This game is not a long game. It's artificially long because of the grinding that you have to do to get from to level yourself up, and because of the artificial difficulty of the game.
It ramps up really quickly, and the grinding is extremely difficult because you can't just like go to an area and grind. You basically just, I guess, trying to get monsters to spawn, and then you fight them, but that gives you hardly anything. And then when you go across the river or the ocean, then you need to use fire to kill those it's just, yeah.
So it's a lot of it really is, it does feel very artificially difficult. The game has a lot of artificial manipulation. There are a lot of spots where things pop up out of nowhere that cause you to fall down. The Octorok will jump up in the middle of your jump. An Octorok that wasn't even on screen in the middle of a jump, pop up and shoot something at you that's specifically designed to make you fall in a pit and lose a life. And lots of things like that where things pop up that cause a one-hit instant kill because of the knockback. But then the other thing that I think is really artificial, and it has to do with the leveling up, is you can cheese the game, essentially, by finishing off a boss in the palaces early in the game, and then backtracking your way out of the castle without putting the crystal into the Easter Island statue. Backtracking your way out of the castle, and then come back to it later, when it takes 8,000 points to level up instead of 300. Come back later and do those first 3 castles, and just walk through and put the crystal in and just level up 3 times. You shouldn't be able to do that. You should be able to manipulate the game in such a way that you can just cheese your way into leveling up, and that the game is actually easier to not play it sequentially and come back and have to cheat your way to level up because it's the only way you can keep your sanity. Because otherwise, like you said, you just find a spot where either the enemies are worthless and it's going to take you 6 hours to level up, or the enemies are so difficult because of the artificially difficult fighting mechanics that they're worth 200 points apiece, but you got a 50-50 shot that you're leaving without your life. Yeah, and you have to start over and rip your damn cartridge out of your Nintendo and destroy it forever.
Return of Ganon. Well, I'm going to do my Dodongo dislikes that there's enemies in here that don't give you any experience. So the enemies that constantly spawn, they're on a lot of repeating spawn pattern, don't give experience, but some of them will take away experience. So not even giving you one experience point is stupid. Like, if I want to sit there and kill flying horse heads or those little horse jockeys that run at you in the first palace,
the ones that skip along if
I want to sit there for 12 hours of my childhood lifetime, killing them one at a time for 1 XP to level up, then that should be my priority. And there's several different things in here in the game that do that. Like anything that has like a continuous spawning trigger to it will not give you any experience. And there's some of the overworld creatures that you run into do that too. Dodongo dislikes it. You start out at the north. Is it the North Palace with a sleeping Zelda?
A sleeping Zelda.
A sleeping Zelda.
Brings me already instantly into another Dodongo dislike. Dodongo dislikes how much of a slut Link is. He's kind of a dog. So the Zelda that you save in The Legend of Zelda is not the same Zelda as this Zelda. And apparently the backstory is so confusing, but
it's a little weird.
But to shorten it up, basically, the original Zelda is this sleeping Zelda in Zelda 2. And then every female that was born into the royal family that from there on, when she was put into her sleep, was then named Zelda. So the Zelda you save in the original Zelda is just offshoot Zelda. It's a secondary Zelda. But in the end of the first Zelda, Link saves Zelda, and they've got hearts there. The hearts indicate there's a romance going on.
That's what I would get from hearts.
Yeah, that's what I would get from that there's a romantic relationship that's been built there. Okay, so this is the same Link, but a different Zelda. And spoiler alert, when you beat the game, the curtains fall. There's no hearts this time. But the curtains fall, but just enough that you can see the legs, and they come closer together, which to me symbolizes...
The dress drops to the ground.
Something's going on there. He's a dog. Link is a dog. Somewhere in Hyrule, there's this poor other secondary Zelda sitting around waiting for Link to come home with... he went out for milk and cigarettes and never came back.
I think that we can say that both Link and Ganon are being catfished by Impa. Or Zelda, because the first Zelda...
Oh, tell us more.
It is Zelda, but it's not Zelda. So Link saves this generation's Zelda. He's going around trying to put things back into place and help rebuild Hyrule, I guess. And the monsters are growing in force. Little symbol shows up on his hand, and he goes to Impa, and Impa says, oh yeah, that is going to open this door. I wrote it down. It's the door that does not open. Behind the door that does not open is Zelda, but it's not the Zelda he just rescued that he was hooking up with.
It's Zelda 2, but actually kind of Zelda 1.
It's Zelda 1.
2 or 3 or 4. We don't even know which Zelda she was.
But so if we can talk about the timeline real quick, The Adventure of Link is the last Zelda game in the known confusing hot mess of a timeline that is The Legend of Zelda, that is an offshoot from the timeline that exists if Link is defeated in Ocarina of Time. It all ends with the adventure of Link. So, is the sleeping Zelda from A Link to the Past? No, it can't be A Link to the Past. What's the Super Nintendo one? Link to the Past, right?
Yeah.
But he saves Zelda in that one too. She's not sleeping. Maybe this is the game
confusing. It's confusing. Maybe we do an entire episode on the Zelda timeline at some point, because the Dodongo dislikes the Zelda timeline. I think even Nintendo's admitted they dislike the timeline. But what is known, what is entirely clear, is in this game, there's one Link and at least 2 Zeldas. And also, we'd be remiss not to point out the fact that the manual clearly points out that you're getting ready to celebrate your 16th birthday. So this Link's only 15 years old. He's 15 years old. He's got Zelda 2 back at home with 6 kids waiting for him to come back with groceries. He's running off on a new quest for this new Zelda. And at the end of the game, the curtains drop. And I don't know if he's coming back home to this family, but even if he does, they shouldn't let him in the door. He's a dog. Link's a dog.
I don't think that's the original. That's not Zelda he hooked up with. Like I said, he was being catfished, and he thinks it's Zelda, but it's not Zelda. Because Impa's protecting the real Zelda, so how come Impa... Like, where's the Zelda from the first Zelda even at in this game?
At home, waiting for Link to come home.
You should be able to switch between... That would just make it more confusing. If you read the story in the manual, it's a little bit... It goes into more detail. The game story makes you believe that Zelda has been put to sleep, which she has, but it's not the Zelda that you rescued in the other game. It's actually right. Zelda that has
the real Zelda.
There's a whole story about a magician put her to sleep, and then her brother fought the magician, or the magician died. It's just, I don't know.
It's confusing.
It's a convoluted story.
We'll talk about it more later, but then I'm casting all this shade on Link, but I'm not even convinced that it's the same Link that comes back at the end of this quest anyway, unless you have a flawless run. But we'll talk about that later.
All right. Well, I don't know what that means, but you have to. All right.
Well, it was a tease.
It was a tease
of things to come. So the first town in the game, I mean, usually the first town is not. There's 2 towns that you could visit first in the game, technically, but typically the first town that you visit is the one that's to the east of the palace that you start off on. It's Roru, and it's one thing that's interesting is that the names of the towns end up becoming the names of the sages in Ocarina of Time later. Most of them. So we'll go through the different names of the towns in this game. It's Roru, Rudo, Saria, all sages in Ocarina of Time. Mido, which they didn't deem fit to be the name of a sage. Instead, they made it that Kokiri leader that won't let you through until you find a sword and a shield.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He didn't rise to the level of a sage. So Mido just got to be the Keebler elf that keep Link from advancing in the game. And then there's Naburu, Darunia, and then Kasuto, which just ended up being nothing. That was the hidden village that you have to find by cutting down the trees. And then there's another Kasuto that was abandoned. So first town, Roru. Talking to people in the town, they give you vague hints about the game, but some of the stuff is just meaningless. Like there's a guy that says, if all else fails, use fire. When is that useful information in this game? Ever. If all else fails, use fire. When does that ever help?
Well, I mean, I could see it could help. Maybe he's talking about the candle.
I thought that too, but he doesn't say candle. He says if all else fails, use fire.
So I think
but the candle, you don't get to use it. It just automatically lights up.
So it's kind of a weird hint because you don't get fire till later on in the game when you go across the river
into East Hyrule.
Ghetto Hyrule,
where everything just falls off the rails. Yeah,
everything is invincible. You have to use fire to kill them.
I guess
that would be my call. That's what I would say.
But I think it's useful. I think it's a useless tip. As soon as you get the fire spell, you're going to test it out anyway. That's just dumb. In the same town, in Roru, there's a kid that tells you that the candle is in Parappa Palace, the first palace.
How does he know?
Why does he know this?
There's another kid that tells you that the raft is in a palace.
The kids know everything. Why do these kids have this information and Link, the chosen hero, does not know this information? Like, in what universe should this kid be telling me where I can find the candle, where I don't already, as the chosen hero, I don't already know this information? And how does that kid even possibly know where that candle is?
Where's Link's candle that he had from? Look, he has all this stuff.
I think he probably hopped it to take care of those 5 kids back home with Zelda 2.
He sold all his ring, his candle, the raft. He sold the flute. He sold the magic key to take care of his 100 kids. All right.
When you can only carry 256 rupees at a time, got to get those rupees.
You don't have to carry rupees in this game. That's the other thing.
You can't carry. I don't think the rupees.
It's dumb.
Hyrule got defunded.
Yeah, he's rebuilding Hyrule on blood, sweat, and tears. No money. What was that town's name? Raru. So the other thing that you find out if you're done is the biggest sin of all is the guy whose name is Error.
He's in Rudo, the second town.
Which one do you think is the first town?
I think the first town is the one to the east of the palace where you get the first spell, where you get the shield spell. I think the second town is the one northwest of the first palace where you have to find the trophy.
See, I think it's the other way because you got to find the trophy. That's what I do first.
The trophy's in the dark. How are you going to get the trophy without the candle?
You can see the animals, the monsters, because you can look at the ground. Shows where the monsters are.
You're quite an adventurer. I used to be an adventurer like you.
Until you took an arrow to the knee. Yeah, I always do the trophy. I'll get the trophy, and then I'll get the magic container, I think is to the south.
And then I'll go to the south,
and then I'll go up and get the candle and do all that stuff.
Okay.
Just because you can see, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, I am Error. He was. I thought Zelda was having a Metal Gear moment.
No, because later on in the game, it's so stupid. Like, instead of telling you the hint that he should tell you, you have to go talk to someone else.
Who says, go talk to Error.
Go talk to Error. So he's basically just saying, I'm the guy you need to come talk to later on,
once you're worthy of my tip.
Write that down. Just like the idiot at the bridge.
Yeah.
Like, you know Batu or whatever that idiot's name in the woods is. We'll get to that too.
No, I don't know him. I just broke into his house in the woods.
I'm trying to save Hyrule. Stop being such jerk-offs. Help me, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, next.
And then when you go back to talk to Error later, after he's just like telling you, this is who I am, come talk to me later. And we talk to him later and he tells you a vague clue about getting to the island palace over in East Hyrule. So I guess there's another, Bagu is another name of one of the guys who looks just like Error. And I guess there's there's been some suspicion or maybe some proof out there that these were programmer jokes because Bagu, I guess, translates to bug. So you have bug and error. And I guess they were supposed to be programmer jokes.
Japanese or something? How am I supposed to get that joke?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I don't. What was I going to say?
So,
it's an error.
You hit on something that I think is a huge Dodongo dislike for this game. You're talking about these stupid back and forth, like go talk to him, and when you talk to him, now I'll help you out, but if you don't talk to him, I'm not going to help you out. Dodongo dislikes that the fate of Princess Zelda and Hyrule rests on completing petty tasks like finding a lost trophy, finding a lost mirror, fetching a woman a drink of water from a fountain that's right next to her house without doing
even. It's not like you're going to get fresh water. You're getting out of a fountain.
Yeah, it's not even like we've run out of water in this town. Can you please help me? I'm dying of thirst. I'm too lazy to walk 6 feet over to the west. Go fetch me some water, boy. And without doing these things, the old man in the basement tunnels won't help you because they won't let you into the house. So Dodongo believes very strongly that Zelda should have him and all of her subjects involved beheaded when she awakens and learns of this treasonous nonsense.
What's their head?
I don't understand. That's the other thing I don't understand. So the story is, okay, so in the original Zelda, Link saved Hyrule. Fine. So the story in this game is Link is actively helping to rebuild Hyrule.
Right.
Ganon is a pile of ash, so effectively dead. But his buddies are like, for some reason, it's not like when the Lord of the Rings guy died and they all ran away. They're like more powerful than ever now that Ganon's dead. So why they want to bring him back, I don't know. But
there's Death Eaters.
Yeah, effectively. But why aren't people being more helpful? I mean, which goes to the bridge. The guy's not going to open up the bridge. You got to, like you said, you got to do all these petty tasks. The gyms, and we didn't really talk about what Link is supposed to do. The story that Impa said, she hands him this basket of gems. There's 6, right? There's 6 different
crystals,
gems or whatever, and a scroll that Link doesn't recognize the words, but he knows what it says. So he reads it.
So Link can't read. He's illiterate.
He's illiterate. Link can't read it, but since he's got the Triforce mark on his hand, now the words just come to him, and it says, there's these towers that you have to put these crystals back in because you're the chosen one, but there's guardians in the palaces that guard the towers, I guess. So the guardians, like everything you kill in the palace is effectively good guys, just like the original. They're not Ganon's minions. They're actually put there to protect the palace. So if I'm the chosen one, if I'm Link, the chosen one, and this scroll knows it, can't the scroll give me like a deactivation code that I could just say like Dodongo, and then everything just shuts down and lets me do my thing? Why do I have to? I'm already the chosen one. The thing on my hand says that. So the fact that I have to go through and kill all this stuff for any reason other than just posturing is ridiculous. I should be able to just like, hey, go into the palace. If you want to have different secret codes for each palace, that's fine. Palace 1 secret code is Dodongo. Palace 2, you just go in, you say that, you put the gem in, you move on to the next palace. I don't get it. Did cover just come off of your... Birdman just opened up his...
just opened up the manual.
And it just fell apart.
It looks like it's all over the table.
Looks like it's been soaked in boiled peanut sauce.
It's pretty bad.
But you're reading in there, but the part where the scroll that he can't read.
I'm trying. So yeah, the guardians of the palaces were made to defend the palaces from being intruded and defend the statues that the crystals need to go into from being intruded. But then when it's time for someone to actually go in there, as you pointed out, there's no deactivation. There's no stand down code. It's just, I guess if you're worthy, you should be able to defeat.
I'm not worthy. I've proven that time and time again with this game that I am not worthy. So there's no...
All right, this is less of a story issue and just more of a petty complaint. Dodongo dislikes the sound of the sword. Don't change perfection. The sound of the sword when you had all your hearts in Zelda was perfect. Perfect. Just leave it the way it was.
Is it the Master Sword? I guess you don't need it because the Master Sword really just there to kill Ganon. So now that's the other thing about this game is that now they've adopted this ridiculous level up system, and Link doesn't have any of his traditional items. Like they've thrown out all the lore, it seems like. I don't think the Master Sword's ever even mentioned.
Well, the Master Sword doesn't really exist at this point. I mean, you had the magical sword in the original Zelda. You had the wooden sword,
Right,
the white sword, the magical sword,
okay.
which then becomes the I know I'm getting hung up on vernacular.
If we look at the timeline of this ridiculous story, Adventure of Link is at the end. If you look at every other game before that, there's a Master Sword. Did you ever play through Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
Is there a part there where you make the Master Sword? I need to play that game.
I need to play it again. I started replaying it recently, but that's one Zelda game where if I leave it for a week or two, I find myself completely lost and I need to go start back over.
So I tried to play it on Switch, but it's got those ridiculous motion controls that they tried to like adapt into Switch. Like, just get rid of them. Just make the game without the stupid motion controls. It was a fun little gimmick when the Wii was around where you could run around and swing it. But can we just get a game that doesn't have the motion control gimmick? And while I'm asking for things, can we get the Wind Waker for Christ's sakes? Come on. No one bought a Wii U. We need a Wind Waker remake. I'm just over it. Yeah. I hate to derail us, but I'm really passionate about that. I love the Wind Waker. It's one of my favorites.
No, I agree. We need to see it again.
Ridiculous magic system. Master Sword's nowhere to be found.
I was hoping we'd see an anniversary collection that would have that included, but we haven't seen it yet. All right, so I think we can agree. I'm kind of just being annoying. I think we can agree the magical sword in Zelda is the Master Sword, even though it's in a stupid location. You go to the graveyard to find it. But no, I think maybe it is that magical sword. Maybe you are still using the Master Sword in this game. I don't really know.
It just seems really crappy.
It sounds really, really crappy. When you shoot your sword, it doesn't go very far. It goes so slowly that you can be running, jump and shoot the sword, and like you keep up with your own sword shot. It's just crappy. And then when you hit your sword on the wall, that just god awful noise when you're it's like it is the equivalent of an 8-bit nails on a chalkboard sound. It is the worst sound in the history of Nintendo. I just hate the sword. I'm sorry, Dodongo hates the sword. He wants me to make sure that everybody knows it.
We're not Dodongo. We're just relaying the gospel of Dodongo.
Yeah, apparently we need to make that clear. We're laying out the gospel of Dodongo.
Yeah. We are. What would you call us? Like we're like emissary.
We are emissaries or emissaries. We are missionaries of Dodongo, spreading the good word of Dodongo.
I'm an imbecile. We're imbeciles of Dodongo.
We're imbeciles. All right.
We're Dodongo imbeciles. All right. In this game, we've talked about, it's a level up game. You're leveling up your character by gaining experience through killing monsters or getting those little pea bags to drop. Once you get to a certain amount of experience, you're given the option to level up either your life, your magic, or your attack. But the magic system is based on mana. I guess we could call it mana. And when you learn a spell, it tells you how much mana it costs to cast a spell. But your mana pool is represented by bars, so you never really know how much mana you have. So there really is no way to manage mana usage throughout the game, because you could use something simple like shield and totally screw yourself over for the rest of the dungeon. So Dodongo dislikes it. He wanted me to say that.
I'm still stuck on P-bag. No, I just can't. All I can see are...
The P-bag? What do you call it?
Well, I mean, I guess it is.
It's a bag with a P on it.
P-bag, but now I'm just thinking about these monster catheter bags all over Hyrule. I'm like, what exactly am I slashing? And why do I want to pierce that P-bag with a sword?
So that's an interesting theory, that the monsters that drop the P-bags are dropping their catheter bags instead.
And what do? You run up and you cut it open with a sword.
And you get showered with
and dance
points.
People rains upon you. I don't know. That's weird.
Right, but the magic system's just stupid.
The magic system
we can continue to talk about since we're on the subject, because I know you had things about the spells.
Dodongo dislikes the use of spells.
Yeah, with the spells and the items, they don't tell you what they do. Like, does it tell you what it does? Let's forget about the manual. The manual at the end tells you what everything does. But if I'm booting this up on my Switch, you don't know what any of that stuff does. In the original Zelda,
my manual is the multilingual version.
Is it?
It's fun and educational.
So you get an item, you get a spell, and how many times did you accidentally cast one of your spells and didn't mean to?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. That's another thing that Dodongo dislikes.
So that's part of the reason that Dodongo dislikes the useless spells, because they just take up space, and then you end up accidentally casting Reflect or Spell.
I forgot about Reflect.
Now I'm ready to complain about it. Reflect. The useless spell. You basically just use it on Wizrobes and 2 palaces. It was a gimmick created to make a challenging boss fight that was more than just a slash and run. We want to have some other mechanics so that you have to figure out how to defeat this boss. But really all it was using the spell you just recently got to shoot their own magic back at them and use it in 2 palaces. So it's kind of a useless spell, but at least there's 2 palaces of Wizrobes you can use it on. But I have no tolerance and no excuse for the spell. Dodongo dislikes the spell.
You can still, you can't reflect. You cast it. You can still block the Wizrobes with your shield. You just can't reflect.
You just can't reflect it back into them and do damage with it. It's just used to actually defeat.
But the spell is stupid.
The spell is used once in the game, and it's used 20 feet from where it's obtained to get the magic key. So you go down into a basement, you talk to the old man, you get the spell, you climb up out of the basement, and then you walk to the very next area, you use the spell, and you go down into another basement, and you get a magic key.
What is that? I wonder what that translates into Japanese. Is that the best they could do? This is a spell. Spell.
I think it was supposed to be ambiguous, like spell. What do we say? The magic word, and you will use the spell. And then you're supposed to spend the next 10 hours artificially lengthening this game by figuring out what you're supposed to use the spell on. But the absurdly empty area of the end of the town, the only town in the game where you get to the end and there's not a sign saying the name of the town and you can leave on either side of town. Instead, there's a giant wall and nowhere to go.
Is it a hidden town? That was the hidden town?
That was the hidden town.
We have to use the hammer.
You got to use the hammer to get...
To deforest.
Because that's what I would use to cut down a tree, as a hammer.
How would you even know that it was there? Is there I don't ever read what those people say. It's another one of those things they up, left, down, left. How do you know that it's there? Is there someone will tell us, I'm sure.
Somebody's going to tell you.
I'm sure there's something about a hidden.
I'm sure.
Anyway, I just derailed you on the spell.
That's the spell. It's useless.
It does have its purpose.
It felt to me like that part of the game. We'll talk more about East Hyrule, but it felt like that was the part of the game where you get into the hidden village of Kasudo. It was supposed to be, in my opinion, the game was supposed to continue on. It was supposed to be longer, but they're like, let's wrap this up. And we're going to give you the spell. We're going to give you a magic jar, and we're going to give you a magic key, all in the same village. And then you're going to come out of this village. You're going to walk a few feet into another village. You're going to get thunder there. We're just going to give you everything here, so you can go finish the game. Just wrap it up.
Yeah, we're tired of this game.
They just got lazy. Dodongo dislikes gaming mechanics that are only used once or twice in a game, and we mentioned this pretty prolifically in the first Holiday Home Alone episode. We can't stand when you have a gaming mechanic that only appears once in the game. And there's a gaming mechanic that's only used twice in this game. In the Saria town, you can talk to a table, or rather, I guess you can search the table to find a mirror. And then in Naburu, you can do the same thing with the fountain to obtain the water. But there's only 2 instances in this whole game where trying to talk or interact with a non-Hylian object, a non-living object, does anything. And it's just kind of silly that you can't... It would be different if earlier in the game you go to a table, you hit the B button, and it says, searched, nothing here. Oh, okay. I'm supposed to search things in this game. But instead, they have this stupid lazy game design, stupid mechanic where you can search stuff twice a game.
Yeah, so what happens is you meet that lady, and she says, I lost my mirror. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I got to go run around Hyrule.
Find a cave. There's going to be a mirror.
There's a mirror there somewhere. It's like a trophy.
No, instead, next just hiding under a table.
It's an empty room, and you're just supposed to deduce that, the mirror must be in here because there's no one else in here.
Right.
Or the water.
It's the first episode of the second season, so we have to talk about the old man. Oh. We talked at length about the old man in Season 1, Episode 1, Legend of Zelda. The old men in the basements, the sage old wizards, are the old man. It's one old man in every basement. And this just confirms our Season 1, Episode 1 theory that the old man is the same person and he's got a series of underground tunnels, because we see these underground tunnels in Zelda 2. That's where you run into the old man, is in the they look like basements, but it's really just his underground tunnel that connects him everywhere in Hyrule. And the old man, what does he do? He gives you just enough power so that you can make it to the Great Palace, where the old man, disguised as Yoda, this is another confusing part of the game, we'll talk about it later, but the old man's disguised as Yoda, he's waiting for you to impossibly fight Thunderbird and then Shadow Link, so that when you die, he can take your blood and bring Ganon back to power. So continues to confirm the old man is awful. The old man is the same old man from the first Zelda, and once again, he either is Ganon or he's working with Ganon to either bring himself back to power or bring Ganon back to power.
He's got a big nose. This old man. This
old man.
He's like,
Zelda 2.
He's changed his appearance so that you can't recognize his scheme. I know there's some debate,
but it's clearly...
It's the same guy.
He's doing the same crap he did in the last game, giving you just enough to open up the gate.
But it definitely goes back to the, like, I'm Link. Don't you know who I am type of shtick.
Also, Dodongo dislikes that the basement stairs to get down to the old man are so tall. The stairs are as tall as you are. They're a little bit taller than you are. Getting out of the basement is like running up the warp wall in American Ninja Warrior.
They're not ADA compliant.
They are
the old man. And that would explain why there's a series of tunnels. That old man can't climb up the stairs.
Climb up the stairs. He's just going to take his tunnel to the next spot and wait for you when you get there. I'll tell you what. When you cross the sea or the river into East Hyrule, you take the raft. That's where the game really just kind of falls off the rails.
That's where you should try to use fire. Fire works well.
Fire works well on every enemy in East Hyrule. They're afraid of fire. The game gets less straightforward at this point and just less fun. This is where the dungeons and towns start getting lazy and sloppy. We start running into invisible walls. We start running into... The game's conditioned you not to fall in pits until you get into East Hyrule. Now that has to be part of your strategy. Fall into pits to find different rooms. It's the invisible wall thing. We've talked about this at length in this podcast. It's lazy. Dodongo dislikes it. Naburu... We talked about the lady with the water is right next to her. That's lazy. We've talked about the town of Kasuto where, okay, you need 3 more items to round things out. We'll just throw them all in this town. Just wrap this up. Everything just gets lazy in East Hyrule, and the game is just less fun once you cross the river.
Well, it's almost over, because that's...
But it's not. You're only halfway through the game. But it feels like it's just...
I mean, they run out of ideas, I guess. So then it just becomes, let's make the palaces bigger and more of a maze and more of a cluster. Let's add Snorlax to the game so that the whistle, you get a whistle in one of the palaces, but the only thing it does is wake up Snorlax. Does it do something else?
It's the Poke Flute. You get the Poke Flute in that castle, you wake up Snorlax, and you can continue through the game.
So if the Poke Flute... So now, we talk about Super Mario Brothers being in the same universe as Zelda... Because of the flute. It's a mystical flute.
Right.
Is Pokemon? So now
it's
Pokemon, because you actively use the flute to move the monster the same way that you do in the original Pokemon game. Using the flute to wake up Snorlax. But you don't have to fight him. See, that would be a cool little, mid-boss fight.
Fighting the River Devil?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk to the people in that town, and everybody talks about the River Devil this, the River Devil that. Somebody says something like the River Devil... eats the dreams of the wicked or something real creepy. And then it's just this goofy little spider icon that disappears when you play a flute and you don't ever fight him.
Well, maybe they ran out of memory or something.
I'm telling you, I think they either ran out of memory, ran out of time, but this game just feels incomplete. I would love to see an Adventure of Link, a remake. Do updated graphics and expand on it. Add some additional items. There's a version, it still uses the same graphics, but there's a version of this game that I saw on YouTube where instead of heart containers, you get heart pieces. Instead of magic containers, you get magic pieces. And there's more of them spread all over the place. There's more areas where if you walk off the map, it triggers a cutscene, or not a cutscene, but a side-scrolling area, and you can earn more stuff. There's more items in it. It just felt like a more complete game. It was kind of cool. But I would love to see something like that re-envisioned, remade by Nintendo to round out some of the hard edges on this game and just make it feel more complete. That would be really cool.
I would play that.
So I got a couple more things on my list. What do you still have on your side?
So, I talked about the Snorlax. A lot of mine, I'm starting to lose steam on this game by this point. Because I've gone
because once you cross the river and you're in East Hyrule, the game loses pace. It really does. And it doesn't take me that long to get to that point in the game. I played through it so many times that I can get to East Hyrule pretty quickly. But it doesn't matter if it takes me an hour and a half or 6 hours to get to East Hyrule. By the time I'm there, I'm just kind of over it because I know what I've got in front of me. I know what I'm going to be facing. I got to go to the stupid maze labyrinth area. I got to go to that awful palace. Then I got to go to another awful palace that's full of invisible walls that's incredibly confusing. And then the palace after that is even more confusing and convoluted. Even though I have the magic key at that point, it still just takes forever to get through. And then I got to go through the trudge of going up the mountain to go get to the Great Palace. And then I got to deal with the Great Palace. It's just grueling.
The boots, though. You get the boots in the Maze Palace, and the whole thing with the boots is you go walk on the water.
Right.
So it's just, how are you supposed to know that you can walk on the water? And then it's only going to let you walk on the water that it wants you to walk on. So it's just another
Certain
stupid,
waters. Yeah.
So it's another maze. After you get done,
It's invisible walls. It's an overhead map version of invisible walls. And then even worse than walking over to get to the palace, somebody mentions in the town that you can walk on water and go straight to get to the palace. So there's some vague hint there. But then they take it even a step further. And as you're walking over east to get to the island palace, you've got to keep testing going up. And there's one prescribed area that you can go up and then you can go right, and it takes you to a heart container. And it's just lazy invisible walls bullshit. And
but there's nothing that would even make you think that there's like a little island there. Like, oh, maybe I can try to get to the island. It's another invisible, like, well, surprise, here's a secret area that has a heart. There's no way that you would know that without reading it in like Nintendo Power. Or maybe that's the shtick. Maybe they program that stuff in there to get you to buy the magazine, to call the counselor line and pay all this money. I mean, but
it's unenjoyable. There are so many areas in this game and many other games, but we're talking about this one, where you have things that are hidden behind truly invisible walls that there is no way for you to figure out without paying for information.
Right. It's a paywall.
It is a paywall.
It's a paywall. Even though it's there for you to discover, it's still a paywall because you got to find that information out. And the only way to find it out is to call the counselor or buy the Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
So
I think we're coming up pretty close to the end of this game, right?
Yeah. When you get the magical key, that's Palace 5. Is it with the magical key?
So you get the magical key in that Kasuto town when you use the spell 10 feet from where you found it. And then you get the magical key you'll have for Palace 6. And I guess your hint that you're missing something is the moment you walk into Palace 6, you go down the elevator and there's a locked door. Like, well, you're not going to find a key in that palace to unlock the locked door because it's in the very beginning. So I think that's supposed to be your hint that you're missing something. Your vague hint that you need to go north of the palace, up through the woods, through the cave, out the other side of the cave, use your hammer to cut down trees to find a hidden town, to go into the town, to go down and talk to a wizard, to get a spell, to walk back out, to use the spell to get the key. That's what you're supposed to intuitively figure out because you get into Palace 6 and there's a locked door.
So
the clues are all there.
So for Palace 6, I just wrote that it was nothing special and it was too easy.
Palace 6 is pretty straightforward once you've got the key, but it's straightforward if you follow the right path. If you follow the wrong path, you go through this endless loop in that palace. It just goes on forever and ever.
Yeah, I was downloading maps off the internet. So.
Yeah, if you know which way to go, Palace 6, you're kind of in and out pretty quickly. But if you don't, it's another one of those where you have to fall through the right spots. And if you don't fall through the right spot, then you find yourself
is that the one where
you
have to like
again.
use ferry?
You got to use ferry while you're falling and move over.
I hate that stupid ferry.
I know you do.
It's so dumb.
So Palace 6, you knock that out. And you've put all 6 crystals in. And putting all 6 crystals in allows the force field to be removed from the Great Palace.
That's what it does.
But now you got to get yourself through the volcano. Making it to the Great Palace is a quest all in and of itself. And at least the programmers set it up so that once you make it to the Great Palace, if you die in the Great Palace, you start back over at the Great Palace.
So even if you burn through all your lives?
Burn through all your lives, Return of Ganon, you hit continue, you're back at the Great Palace. You don't have to make it over there
that would be well, that's something I never knew that. It's probably usually because going up that path with a little, they call them traps, I guess.
Yep.
You get trapped, and those little snake guys are just up there. I mean, now there's eyeballs flying back and forth. They're chucking rocks at you. You're trying to make it
everywhere.
Usually, by the time you get to the Great Palace, you might as well just game over it. You might as well just game over it because it's ridiculous. And then palaces are like that. Like because I had written down for the Maze Palace, the one we were just talking about. Like I got to the boss, I have no magic. I'm at half health. This is going to be tricky, and that's the one with where you have to cast Reflect on the
wizard, the giant wizard.
So really, I got all the way to the boss. I didn't have any magic left. I couldn't farm for magic because there was nothing left to farm. So I effectively I had to kill myself.
And that's Palace 5. That Palace 5, the Labyrinth Palace, that's the one that burns through all your magic. Then Palace 6 is where you fight the dragon.
Yeah, the guy that comes up out of the water or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of dumb.
Lava dragon.
Yeah,
which sounds like a Volvagia kind of dragon. I don't know what its name is, but it's just sort of a skinny little dragon.
They did the same thing in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, that was was it Volvagia, I think?
Volgagia. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Anyway.
This is the part of the Dodongo Dislikes Another Gaming podcast where I'd like to spend a little time talking about death.
Okay.
Can we do that? You start this game with 3 lives, and you can earn more lives by finding Link dolls, or later on after you've maxed out your character, if you get, I think it's 9,999 points,
you get another
9,000, you get another life. Huh. That's what they give you. This system is never again used in the franchise, and for good reason. It is confusing as hell when you really stop and think about it. So when you die in other Legend of Zelda games, you can continue, but you respawn back to a pre-death point in time. So it's almost like
you never died.
Like you never died. Your last playthrough was just a premonition of what's going to happen to Link if you make that same mistake again. But in Zelda 2, you don't do that. In Zelda 2, you continue keeping the progress of whoever just died, and you continue the mission. So it begs the question, did Link just die? Is he then reborn on your next life? Is this a clone of Link? How many Links are there? Is it just a possessed Link doll taking human or Hyrulian form? What the hell is this thing attempting to save Zelda at the end of the game, assuming you've died at least once? So you start the game as Link. Unless you make it through on a flawless run where you never die, who's saving Zelda?
So Link is dying and being respawned?
That's the question. Respawned, reborn, cloned? Is it the doll that you picked up has come to life, and that's the new Link? So now it begs the question, at the end of the game, fast forwarding, whatever's going on behind the curtains with the original Zelda, is that even the original Link? If you've died at least once, is it even the original Link? Or is the Link that left the 5 kids at home with the second Zelda to go on the quest, did he fall in a pit and die, and this is some clone or Chucky doll version of Link that saved this new Zelda?
So he transfers his soul into the dolls until he dies, and then the soul goes back to...
It's just another weird, unanswerable question from this weird game.
There's no... Being that this is the last game in the timeline of the Zelda history where the hero is defeated, there's never been a sequel to this game. So eventually, like when we talked about this being the podcast, like this is the last of this timeline. So really, they could go anywhere with it.
Well, think about
depending
this
on if they.
This is the last series of a timeline that's already broken off with a bunch of if this happens, then this happens. If the Ocarina Link fails, then this timeline. Now you've got, at the end of this timeline, you can't have any more games because now it's too confusing, because now you have if the original Link who starts off on the quest never loses one of his lives, then this is the timeline. If you die once and you're respawned, then this is the timeline. If you die twice and it's the doll that comes back, then this timeline. If you spent 72 hours farming points and you have 9 extra lives and you spent 7, 8, 9 of those lives, it's this doll or this doll or this doll or this doll that's come back. There's really an infinite number of doll links that could be saving the original Zelda, which would spawn a new timeline. There's an infinite number of timelines that could go on, because there's no limit to how many links you could create, depending on how diligent you want to be and how many points you want to earn.
This is the ancient. So if Link wins, the ancient Princess Zelda returns. Is she aging while she's sleeping? How does that work? I guess
she looks. I mean, if she looks good for her age, I think she's been preserved, kind of like the Sleeping Beauty kind of thing.
So have we tried to beat this game so fast that when she wakes up, she takes off all her clothes, kind of like. Like, isn't that what happens in Metroid?
No, I don't think there's any alternate endings depending on how quick. Like the curtain gets lowered less and less depending on how fast you beat the game. No, I think it's one ending. I think it should be a different ending though for which Link saves her. Original Link, reborn Link, or doll Link.
If you don't die once, doesn't matter about time. If you can make it through the whole game without dying, no, that doesn't work. I've had a whole thing in my head like this. So let's say you make it in less than 30 minutes. What's the speed? I don't know what the speed is.
Speedrun record?
Look at the speed. Go with you make it without dying in less than 15 minutes, which we can change. At the end, Zelda thanks you. She says, "Thank you, Link, for being so speedy to save me." And she throws off her dress and says, "Let's hope you take it slow from here on out." And then the curtain lowers, and then the old man kind of runs out and he peeks underneath the curtain. Oh, I love this version. Now I'm liking this game. This is the remake.
Well, like I said, they need to do a remake of this game. So you send your letter into Nintendo and tell them this is my suggestion for.
Did you ever try to order a copy of Nintendo Power? I think we decided that.
Oh, I didn't. I'm going to though. I still need to try it.
You could send them like $4, but I think there's like a date on this.
On one of the back issues.
Yeah.
This is showing 1650.
All right, so less than 20 minutes. So the speedrunner does the speed. We'll say less than
30
20,
minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Less than 30 minutes. One life. Under 30. You get to bang Zelda at the end.
So Zelda 2 introduces us to Dark Link for the first time in what is arguably the worst boss fight in the history of the universe. And this is pretty much the note on which this game ends. It's awful. You have two options.
It is.
In my opinion,
awful.
you have two options. Now, there's better players out there who are going to disagree with this, but in my opinion, you have two options when you fight Dark Link. You either cheese the fight by going over to the left, ducking, and just slashing until you win, or die. Those are your options. But the old man wanted you to die anyway because he needs your blood. So Dark Link was set up to be the unscalable wall at the end of an unscalable game.
What's the Thunder? So before you beat Dark Link, you have to beat the Thunderbird. So
Thunderbird.
if you die, because here's what happens. If you go into the Thunderbird on your last life, and let's just say you kill the Thunderbird. Okay. Now you don't get to refill anything. You don't get a new magic fill up. You don't get a life fill up. It's straight into Shadow Link. It's like, it's it. No one's there helping you. You're fighting Shadow Link. Now, if you're not going to cheese Shadow Link, it's a problem.
It is a huge problem.
Because if you die, think about young Birdman, who took the path where the NES wasn't destroyed or defeated, and he's actually at Shadow Link. Here's where you die, and you start again at the beginning of the castle or the palace, right?
Right.
But is the Thunderbird dead, or is it reset the whole thing?
I don't remember. If you beat Thunderbird and then you die on Link and you start over, I don't remember if Thunderbird's still there or not.
So with Thunderbird, you have to use Thunder to kill it.
You have to use Thunder to make it vulnerable to attack. Like your best pairing is Thunder, Shield, Jump, so you can then jump up and.
But you can't do any of that. So
you can do that.
No,
if you're no. If you're level 8 on Magic, you can do.
I'm telling you can't. You have to pick. So you need to use Thunder to do damage, which leaves you with choosing either Shield and not being able to afford life if needed, or Jump. And maybe. So you have to pick one or the other.
I think you have enough magic to do Shield and Jump. You don't have enough magic to do Shield and Life or Jump and Life, but I think you can do Shield
and Shield and Jump. That was kind of got me upset because I could do Shield and maybe I guess I could do Jump, but then I don't have any life left. I'm completely out of magic. So if I beat the Thunderbird, I don't get like a courtesy refill on anything. I'm just straight into Shadow Link. Who's the old man? That's not the old man up there.
So to the left, I don't know. I think it's the old man pretending to be Yoda. There is a room to the left of the Thunderbird, I believe, that if after you beat Thunderbird, if you decide to backtrack, there's a bunch of blocks you can break, and you got like a 50-50 shot of releasing one of those god-awful running, sword-throwing things, or a potion.
A red potion.
So you could potentially have a chance to refill.
But the odds are you probably needed that red potion
before you fought the Thunderbird.
Yep. It's just ridiculous. You think the midget is the old man?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm so confused.
That was done
by that part of the game that I just don't know.
The ending doesn't make any sense. Like, who's the little bitty guy jumps down? He's there at the beginning of the fight, and he's up at the top, like Donkey Kong with Pauline.
I think he's the old man. So you talked about the old man taking on different forms. He looks a little different in this one than he did in the original Zelda. I think that's when he has exhausted all of his magical resources to change his appearance. I think that is him in his most decrepit form. I think that is Ganon. That's if you parallel it to Harry Potter in the Sorcerer's Stone, where he's drinking the unicorn blood to try and stay alive, and he's this pathetic, decrepit being. That's Ganon. Down, he's got his cane. He's half the size of a Hyrulian. He's just sort of like a child-sized, decrepit little thing. And the old man, either one, he wants you to fail so he can take your blood and bring himself back to full power. but he also has to take on a slightly different form than the people who've been helping you in the past, because he doesn't want you to recognize him, because if you do manage to beat Shadow Link, he's got to pretend like he's happy about it.
He was happy.
He's got to pretend like he's happy about it, because he's not going to get your blood, and now he's going to have to figure out some other scheme.
What does it do, though? So maybe I didn't read the story good enough, or my mind was too obsessed with what was happening behind the curtain, but I have the Triforce now. Does that just make every monster go away? Because I had the Triforce before. But now I woke up Ancient Zelda.
Nobody knows.
It doesn't make any sense.
Nobody knows.
What the monsters, the Ganon's ashes are still there. Really, all I've done is woken up Zelda. And what does she do? She's useless. There's not a game that she does anything other than the Hyrule Warriors game, is there? Or Smash Brothers.
She's a little bit useful in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. But,
yeah.
No, in this period of the timeline, no, I don't think that her coming back, aside from maybe giving the people hope, is really doing a whole lot, but
I think it'd be just as so Impa held the secret. Like, it's the Impa secret that behind this door that can't be opened is Ancient Zelda. So
ultimately,
now people think that the Zelda we rescued in the Legend of Zelda is the Zelda. Now all of a sudden, Link's out. I'm trying to save Zelda. Save her from what? She's over there nursing the 10 babies you guys created. But then
maybe that's why nobody's particularly helpful in the towns, because if you think about it from the townspeople's perspective, Zelda's been saved already. They don't know anything about this original Zelda that the Impa's kept the secret on. They don't know that she's asleep in this hidden room. They think everything's fine. Some of Ganon's monsters are still roaming the streets, and they probably have some guards who are out there occasionally trying to take him down. But for all intents and purposes, Ganon's been destroyed. Hyrule is safe. And they don't really have a whole lot of reason to fret until you get over into East Hyrule, where things are a little rougher, and you got that town where it's been overrun by monsters and they all had to flee. Yeah. But back where everything is nice and cozy and safe over in West Hyrule, they all feel like everything's good. I mean, this whole mission is not to save Hyrule. This mission is just to save the OG Zelda. So if you fail in your mission, the problem is the stakes are too high. It's not worth it for one Zelda. This mission never should have been embarked upon, because if you fail, Ganon gets your blood, and he comes back to power, and Hyrule's screwed.
Right.
If you succeed, you manage to wake up the original Zelda. Like, you are sacrificing all of Hyrule for one person.
Booty call.
behind the curtain scenes.
You already have the Zelda girlfriend.
It's really just not a very benevolent quest. It just isn't.
You have a girlfriend. You're tired of her. You've been around. I don't know. We covered everything?
I think I have one final Dodongo dislikes that is going to be controversial.
Oh boy, here we go.
Because we're getting ready to get into the bombs.
We're getting into the bombs.
So, Dodongo dislikes, and this is based on the prophet Birdman. Prophet might interpret the word of the great Dodongo differently, but from my reading of the ancient text, Dodongo dislikes the misplaced hate for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link.
Well, how would you?
This game is only hated because of expectations that were set because it's the sequel to The Legend of Zelda. This is not a bad game. The music is incredible. The palace theme is almost 2 minutes long, which is nearly unprecedented for the NES. This game is better than similar genre games, Faxanadu, Battle of Olympus. There are countless other games that this game is better than, but this game gets so much hate only because it's a sequel to The Legend of Zelda. It's not a bad game, and Dodongo dislikes the misplaced hate for this game.
So, your interpretation of the ancient Dodongo scripture,
texts,
or whatever, just so no one's confused out there, is that if this was the first Zelda game, as we know, it would be disliked because it didn't follow closer to the script of this Zelda game.
If this game was called The Adventure of Tom.
Of Stink.
And instead of Zelda, you're saving Brittany. And instead of Ganon, it's Gordon. If this was a different standalone game,
no one would have played it.
No one would have played it because it didn't have the Zelda badging, but there wouldn't be the level of hatred for this game if it wasn't connected to the original Zelda. It was just, people saw it as a letdown because it didn't follow the formula, and there's a lot of problems with the game, but it's not a bad game.
It's just difficult. It's punishingly difficult. There's not enough in it to make it a light. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just punishingly difficult.
Yeah, the Adventure Link, it's overly punitive.
There's a lot of games back then that were difficult. Like Castlevania was a game that back in the day was a difficult game to play. But when I played it for the podcast, I didn't find it to be that difficult. Now, was I able to like Google information to find out how to make things easier? Yeah. But with the Adventure of Link, there's nothing that you could look up to make anything easier. Now, I learned that you could jump and hit those armored knights if you jump and
jump slash them.
Slash them. But I can never get the timing down enough to not make it equally frustrating as trying to just do it normally. Like bring, bring, bring. They always know where my sword's going to be.
I've got the play mechanics down on this game pretty well. That the iron knuckles don't pose any problem for me. Really, I mean, until I get to the Great Palace, I don't find this game to be difficult anymore. But if I didn't have access to internet resources, Nintendo Power, information that I've gotten secondhand from other people who have had access to those resources, had I been placed in a vacuum in 1988 with this game and I wasn't allowed out of the room until I beat it, I could have spent the next 80 years of my life and I never would have beaten this game. I believe that. I think there's enough nebulous crap in this game that was hidden behind that invisible paywall that if you were left only to your own devices, you were never meant to beat this game on your own. You needed help. And the help was by way of subscription to Nintendo Power or a call to the counselors. Yeah. You were never meant to beat this game on your own.
I don't know that. I mean, I will continue to try to beat this game without using the support of the Switch thing. I mean, I'm always going to play. I can't say that I guess I can't say that I hate this game. I have a strong distaste for this game because there's always going to be a time when I want to play it. So it can't really fall into a hate category because I'll still play it. Like a game like Sonic, which I have no desire to ever touch again. There's no reason to play that game. But this game is just, and I don't know, maybe it's because it's a Zelda game and I just like Zelda games, but I was playing it this morning for no reason. There's no reason other than to get my angst all up.
This is a Nintendo Power game. It is dangerous to go alone. Take this. You can't beat this game on your own. You need resources. And even once you know what needs to be done, like I've got this game committed to memory by this point. Because like I said, about every 3 months I pick it up and I play through it again. I've got it pretty much committed to memory. It's still a hard game. But not knowing about the hidden village of Kasuto, not knowing about the invisible walls, like not knowing, impossible. Maybe not impossible without any help to beat the game. Damn near impossible, but impossible to find everything, I would think.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with us. I agree with you. Dodongo agrees with you, but I'm sure there's going to be people, it's easy to find all that stuff. You just got to go to the second town and they tell you exactly where to go.
Yeah, I don't think so. So maybe impossible is not the right way to describe it. I think the way I said it before probably makes more sense and is probably more accurate, is this game was not designed to be beaten without help. And at that point in time, that help was going to cost you.
Yeah, so that's the paywall that was hidden behind.
Yep.
Let's do our
bomb away
rating. I didn't write anything down. I got to that point and then I just got distracted. I got a whole page full of notes and then I just didn't write a bomb down. So I know what I want to give it. So I would give The Legend of Zelda 2, Link's Adventure of Link. 3.5 bombs. I'm going to give it 3.5 bombs. That's my score, which isn't terrible. It's decent. That's about what it came out to be, I think. If you look at reviews, and we talked about this at the beginning, it fell right in between the 70 and 90%, depending on who had it. Obviously Nintendo Power thought higher of it than some of the other people, but there's other people that thought high of it. So 3.5 bombs. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
All right, Dodongo Files. Birdman is giving The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link's Adventure, 4.5 bombs.
That's ridiculous.
4.5 bombs. 4.5. It's a good game. It's a good game. And if you don't agree, Dodongo dislikes you.
Yeah. So Dodongo hath say it, so it shall be done. All right. We are back for season 2.
Oh, we're back,
This is episode 1. We're going to come back for episode 2, which is going to be in tradition, which I guess we're going to make it the tradition. We're going to do Zelda, followed by a Mario game. So we're going to do Mario 2, which is going to be the next game we're going to do. And
which Mario 2 is it? The original Mario 2, or are we doing the Doki Doki Panic that was reskinned for America?
So I'm going to say this right now. And we're going to turn episode 2 into a drinking game. And every time that Birdman mentions Doki Doki Panic in episode 2, I want you, if you're of age to drink, I want you to take a shot of alcohol, vodka, whiskey. to remember that.
We're going to be promoting some alcohol.
Now, remember that because I'm not going to mention it again so that he'll forget that I put this out there.
So I apologize in advance.
Because you hear it a lot, and I don't want to get too much into like the next episode, but it's just everywhere. Like
it's a bit much.
I would like to not talk about Doki Doki Panic,
yeah.
but it's going to come up, and I know you won't be able to help yourself.
Doki Doki Panic, Dodongo Dislikes podcast, DDP. Yeah, I'll have to talk about it a little bit, and I need to bring it up because we got to talk about double sprites. There's all kinds of cool stuff to talk about on Mario 2, but that's what we're going to do.
All right. We'll see you next time
on Dodongo Dislikes,
another gaming podcast.
This concludes the broadcast of Season 2, Episode 1 of Dodongo Dislikes, Another Gaming Podcast. Episode 2 will begin in 1,209,600 seconds.
1,209,599.
1,209,598.
1,209,597.
1,209,596.
1,209,595.
1,209,594.
1,209,593.
1,209,592.
1,209,591.
1,209,590.